Okay, Revelation chapter 21. Now let me tell you what we're going to talk about in chapter 21 of Revelation chapter 21. We're going to talk about uh, the occupants who are going to be the people, the occupants of the city or the new heaven and new earth. We're going to talk about the size of this new heaven and the new earth. We're going to talk about the walls. We're going to talk about the foundations. We're going to talk about the throne. We're going to talk about the tree of life. We're going to talk about the source of life. We're going to talk about how long we're going to be in heaven or the duration of heaven. We're going to talk about the location, the shape, the gates, the streets, its rivers, its worship center or its place of worship. And we're going to talk about, which is I think is the most important thing I'm going to spend a little bit more time on, is what we're going to be doing when we get to heaven, according to the scriptures. It tells us in the Revelation 21 what we're going, or the Bible, because sometimes you have to look outside of the book of Revelation to see what we're going to be doing, what's going to be happening. And if you read Revelation chapter 21, it's so much in there. And like I say, when you read it, you got to understand that these are what John is being told to write down, and John is being told. Now listen to this amazing fact. Paul is the only one that went to heaven and came back. But he wasn't permitted to write anything about it. John never went to heaven, but he tells us everything we need to know about heaven. Paul says, I knew a person 2.5 years ago that went to heaven. I don't know whether in spirit or in the body, but was taken into the third heaven to see what was not lawful for any man to see. He went to heaven and saw, came back. And he says, on my way back, I was given as a message of Satan to buffet me, and I was given a thorn in the flesh. Go ahead.
Well, you say Elijah and Enoch was the one raptured up.
Yeah.
Did they come back?
But they never came back. They stayed. When they went up, Enoch and Elijah went up, never came back.
Okay.
Moses died and was in the Mount of Transfiguration, but he never came back. Paul was the only one that went up, came back, and was not permitted to write anything about what he saw, because he said he saw what was not lawful for men to see. But then John never went to heaven. John, when he wrote this, was on the Isle of Patmos, and he was given visions. He got all of this through visions, and he wrote down what the angel told him to write down. Write these things are faithful and true. And now he's finna get just about his last two visions, and it's going to, the angel finna speak to him. And he's gonna now record what he saw. But he closes chapter 19 out in verse 15 by says, anyone whose name is not found recorded in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. And then he talks about, because this is, he kind of closes out chapter 19, talks about God now has separated the right from the wrong, the sheep from the goat, the righteous from the from the unrighteous, the elect, or those who are saved from the unsaved. There's been a separating. As the old church said, I want to be at the meeting around God's throne after the separation. That has happened. The goats have been put over here, the sheep over here, the righteous over here, the unrighteous over here, the saved over here, the unsaved over here. This is the final separation, the final purging, because when we closed in chapter 19, we are now at the end of the millennial reign of Christ. Now, one of the things that I wanted to suggest to you is what I was studied last week after I went and studied, because you remember he talked about in chapter 19 this final judgment and who are going to be those who shall live during the millennial reign of Christ. Some scholars say that those who are going to live during the millennial reign of Christ 1,000 years are those who came through the tribulation. Because verse 5 says, this is the first resurrection of chapter 19. It said, this is the first resurrection, and the rest of the dead did not come back to life until the 1,000 years had ended. Now, that is a controversial statement, which I'm not going to dive into that controversy. Some scholars believe that only those who have came through the tribulation, the 7 year tribulation, and those are the only people that are going to live during the millennial reign of Christ. And those who had already died have been raptured up before the tribulation. They're not going to come back and live during that 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. And during the millennial reign of Christ, some scholars believe that those who survive the tribulation shall live during the millennial reign of Christ, and they're going to have children. They're going to live on the earth as we are living now, but they're going to live in a perfect environment. One scholar said the reason why they're going to live here on the earth for 1,000 years, and they're going to be some people rebellious, and they're going to be deceived by Satan, is to demonstrate this one point. It's to demonstrate that even in a perfect environment for 1,000 years, because sin is not in the world but in men's hearts, they'll still rebel against God. So this idea that if we had a perfect world, this peaceful utopia where everybody loved each other, nothing was wrong, everything was perfect, man would still sin because the outside world is not the issue, it's the heart. Because these people are going to live 1,000 years in perfect peace, but yet sin still crouches at the door, as God told Cain. Because the problem is not a better environment, a better world. The issue is better people in a crazy world. Because so God gonna create what we call a perfect utopia, a peace and prosperity in a perfect world, where we have everything we need and go without nothing that we want. And yet man still is going to rebel because it is the heart that is utterly corrupt and depraved. And God knows that. So he brings these people who have died or survived or been through the tribulation, allow them to come and live on the earth for 1,000 years because they've been saved by the witness of the 144,000. 144,000 might live during that time, and yet still man is going to find a way to rebel and allow the evil that's in his heart to rise up and align themselves with the devil to rebel against God. So it makes sense. Because there are going to be people being born during this millennial reign of Christ. And so let's go to chapter 21, because in chapter 21, and after all of these events, John says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old heaven and the old earth disappeared, and the sea was also gone. That's important. Now, this is something that's I really hate to study sometimes because it gets so deep. It gets so deep, and I get myself in a rabbit hole. Okay, where are we gonna go if we are on the earth or in the old heaven, on the old earth? Where are we going to go while God makes the new heaven and the new earth? See, I shouldn't even study that because it really creates a dilemma. If you're going to renovate my house and take up all the floors, take down all the walls, and do a complete gut job, renovate it, I can't stay there. Where am I going to stay while you renovate? Turn the old heavens and the old earth into a new heaven and a new earth. Where am I going to go? Doesn't that create a dilemma? I shouldn't even study that because I'm just going. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I never did either until I started listening because somebody getting really deep. And so one guy suggested that God has a remedy. We don't know what it is. But in order to create this new heaven and new earth, if we are in heaven or on the earth, and the people on the earth, if he's going to make a new heaven and new earth, the people have to go somewhere. Anyway.
Maybe he got a place.
What do you mean by people though? What do you mean?
All who have been saved and all who are saved.
Okay, so you're saying that for a new heaven, for
Okay, look at the language. He says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the old heaven and the old earth, in this translation it says disappeared, but in the original, in the King James, it says passed away. And there was the sea was gone. That's talking about the earth. And the heavens could mean, he says heaven, plural, earth, plural. I'm gonna move on because I'm gonna get in a rabbit hole. But I'm telling you that we don't know how. I just thought that was interesting. And then he says, I saw the holy city. This is another one that confused me. Because he says, I saw, because listen, these are three separate things, and one of them will be on one of them or in one of them. Because he says, I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of the heavens like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. Now, this is one that I was interested in that I'm not going to go in a rabbit hole, but I'm going to explain to you the two different understandings. Because he talks about heaven, he talks about earth, but he talks about a city. Yes. And the question I had, and the reason that made me study was, where is this city going to be located? Is it going to be located in the new heaven or on the new earth? And many scholars believe it's going to be located on the new earth, where the present Jerusalem is located now. Because Jerusalem is the holy city of God. Kind of look a little convoluted, ain't it?
Yeah, because
It's a little convoluted, ain't it?
yeah, because it says he saw a new city.
Yes.
And a new Jerusalem coming down. So a new Jerusalem coming down and a holy city.
The city is the city is the new Jerusalem.
So he didn't. I guess it's just metaphorically speaking.
Yes, because the new city is the new Jerusalem. Because the old Jerusalem is the city of Jerusalem. It is the land of promise that God promised to Abraham under the Abrahamic covenant. And now in every civilization, even in our culture today, Jerusalem is called the city of God. It is the birthplace of Jesus. It is where Jesus was resurrected. It has always been considered the headquarters of God, where the people of God, you're going to see the phrase in the Old Testament or in the New Testament after the establishment of the city is we're going up to Jerusalem. So Jerusalem plays a significant role in the religious life of the Jews, but it also plays an important role in the time of Jesus. And so this city now is a flashpoint for the whole world. The Christians claim it, the Muslims claim it, and other religions also claim this one city. It is the center of religious sacredness, and so y'all gonna make me. I ain't going there, but I'm gonna explain to you a little further. And I heard a loud voice from the thrones saying, "Look, God is now. God's home is now among his people." I'm reading a New International Version of the scriptures. He says, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them. They shall be his people. He shall be their God. And should be, God himself shall be with them. And so this is, and you really got to, see, this is where, when you read scripture, you got to use your imagination a little bit. And you got to understand that the presence of God was with the Israelites as they exited Egypt. Pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. And once Moses built the tabernacle, the presence of God hovered over the Ark of the Covenant. And it was symbolized with a cloud and a fire, the presence of God. on the backside of the desert, it was fire that Moses saw. The bush would not be consumed. And he went, and God spoke from that. And so God has some kind of form, but metaphorically, the presence of God is a cloud and a fire as it led the Egyptians out. Now, and so that means that God's presence is mobile. And so it says that God's presence will be among his people. And so forth. And then it says in verse 4, which is a lot. I ain't going to unpack all of this because y'all going to have a lot of questions. And God shall wipe every tear from their eyes. That is so much packed in there that I'm not going to try to unload it. That's going to answer a lot of questions you ask. One of the questions that was asked in one Bible study I was listening to, so will I know people who didn't make it to heaven? Well, I know that they did make it.
How do you know?
Huh?
How do you know?
What? How do I know what?
People didn't make it to heaven.
You will know the people that are in heaven, but you might have people that you knew on earth. And when you get to heaven, if you knew that they didn't make it to heaven, what would you do? Shed tears. If God's going to wipe all your tears from your eyes, there's some things you just not going to know in heaven. I'm not going to use the word remember because that wouldn't be an adequate word. But there's some things you're just not going to know. Like people who are in heaven now do not know what's going on earth. I'm not saying they don't have a memory, because your memory you need your memory in order to enjoy heaven. But there's some things you're just not going to know. And one of the illustrations we're given by Jesus in Luke's gospel is the illustration with the rich man and Lazarus. The rich man knew some stuff. Lazarus didn't know what was going on in hell, but the rich man knew what was going on in heaven. He knew who Abraham was. He had a memory. He knew. Said, send Abraham, father Abraham. All of a sudden, he fathered Abraham now. When you was on earth, you wasn't nobody. It's too late then. You get what I'm saying?
Well,
Ask a question.
no, it's not a question, it's just what I'm thinking for myself.
Okay.
I think that when I make it to heaven, my tears will be rejoicing. Tears of rejoicing.
Yeah, but go ahead. That sounds good.
Because all the tribulation and trials that I went through, I'm going through now, I will go through. When it's all over, I would like to think that my tears will be tears of rejoicing.
Let me explain this to you, because you got to keep reading. You won't even have tear ducts in heaven.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, but
You won't even, because see, look, keep reading. Let me show you what I'm keep reading. Now I want you to skip because I'm gonna keep reading, because you got to remember the part that says not only tears, but there will be no more crying.
That's right.
And so you won't even have the ability. What you're going to do when you get to heaven is such rejoicing,
Yes.
because you're going to have a new body, and the way you express your emotions are going to be completely different.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so you're going to rejoice, and it's going to be an expression of praise and worship that is so unlike what we do now. That's tied to our human emotion. You really can't even imagine it. And when he says, wipe all tears from your eyes and no more crying, that the way we do things now, and John is very deliberate in trying to paint the picture. Everything you said you're going to do, but you're not going to express it through tears or crying. It's going to be, you're going to express it through word. But let me give you this, because we might run out of time. Let me give you the things we're going to be doing in heaven. And then you'll understand what I'm going to do, what I'm talking about. Let me give you the things we're going to be doing when we get to heaven. Heaven is going to be a place of learning. Now, I want you to get this, and because then I'm going to go back and kind of get it. Heaven is going to be a place of learning. It's going to be a place of learning. Because listen, this is where this is taught. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 9, because this is what the Apostle Paul says. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect comes, then that which is in part will be done away with.
It's in 1 Corinthians
The
what?
1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 9. And Paul is trying to express we're going to learn so much, and it's a place of learning. I don't understand exactly what Paul means when he says that in context, but he's going to talk about heaven is going to be a place, and really the word learning, I don't know if it's adequate. I would love to use the word, we're going to understand it better by and by. Some things we're just going to learn, know, understand, or be able to grasp that we just don't understand now. But he says we're going to know in part. God's going to reveal to us in such a way. We're going to learn so much. We might learn so much about our existence on earth, the calling we had here on earth, the purpose we had here on earth, the trials we went through here on earth. We'll understand it better by and by. Make sense to you? When it says we're going to learn so much, Job might get to learn why he had to go through the hell he went through. He might know in part. God might give him a level of understanding. And let me give you the second thing we're going to do when we get to heaven. Not only are we going to learn, but we're going to sing.
Yeah.
Sing. That is in Isaiah chapter 44, verse 23.
Isaiah what?
Isaiah chapter 44, verse 23. Sing, O ye heaven, for what the Lord has done. Shout, ye lower part of the earth. Break forth into sing, ye mountains, O forests, and every tree therein. For the Lord has redeemed Jacob and glorified him in Israel. We're going to sing. And you got to understand context. Now, I can't read all of what chapter 44 said, but Isaiah is looking forward to heaven. We're going to sing in heaven. Now, I'm going to tell you to help Patsy out, Patsy, because she real, it ain't going to be none of this singing we hear now. Ain't going to be some of this stuff we hear now, Patsy. Ain't going to be no quartet singing in heaven. Ain't going to be no twang. Ain't going to be like, and so, we love to mess stuff up. But it's going to be songs that bring praise and honor to God and the Lamb. They're not going to be about us. One of the songs we know they're going to sing because they're already singing it. Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty. Now we're going to sing something in effect about our redemption. The angels can't sing the song we're going to sing. The songs we're going to sing because they've not experienced the redemption of God through Jesus Christ. So we're going to sing when we get to heaven. But we're also going to serve. We're going to serve God, and heaven's going to be a place of service. And that's Revelation chapter 22, verse 3. And his servants shall serve him. Revelation chapter 22, verse 3. We know we're going to be serving. This is where you talk about reward. We're going to be giving God service. And the service will be based upon our reward. The reward is a talent or a gift that we're going to get for the work we done here on earth, and we're going to give God service. Because see, what was Adam commanded to do? He was given dominion. He was the caretaker of the earth. He was the caretaker in the garden. We don't know specifically what all that entailed, but even though Adam was in the garden, he still had a job to do. He had the upkeep, the maintenance, or whatever it is. Adam served God in the garden. He was given dominion. Make sense to you? So heaven is not going to be a place where you just sing and learn. It's going to be a place where you serve. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
And listen, Revelation chapter 7, verse 15 says, therefore are they before the throne of God, serving him day and night in his temple. That's Revelation chapter 7, verse 15. It's still talking about serving. It's not going to be a place where you're idle and in church all day. We're going to be serving. Because first of all, we're going to live in a perfect environment as Adam lived. And there's going to be upkeep. We're going to have dominion. Y'all still with me?
Yes.
And now this goes controversial because y'all gonna have a lot of questions. Not only are we going to serve him, but heaven will be a place of fellowship. A place of fellowship. A place of fellowship. Okay, and I'm going to read what this author says. This is what he says about fellowship, because this is the most frequently asked question, and he gave some commentary. He said the question is often asked, will we know and recognize each other in heaven? To this, the scriptures answer an emphatic yes. During the transfiguration of Jesus, the Lord spoke freely to Moses and Elijah in Matthew chapter 17, verse 3. Centuries after both of the Old Testament heroes had departed from this earth, yet they were still recognized as Moses and Elijah. In addition to this, the Apostle John, during his vision in Revelation, sees and recognizes the difference between elders and angels and various redeemed people from the nations of the earth who lived during his writings and after the tribulation. We will know each other. We will be able to fellowship. I know y'all got some questions.
Pass. Now, we take on this new body.
Yes.
We are no peoples, but that fleshly part won't be there.
It will be there. We're going to have a bodily resurrection.
I'm gonna still want coat and all that.
No, you don't want none of that stuff.
It ain't gonna be there, man.
No, none of that stuff will be there. Because see, when it's, let me get through reading. Let me get through reading the text. Let me get through reading it. Let me get through reading this. Because let me get through reading this. Gladys, because you'll get us all off on a tangent here. Hold on, let me get through reading it. It says, and God shall wipe all tears from their eyes. There'll be no, and he said, there will be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, and no more, Gladys, just finna help you, pain. And you can put cravings in there with the pain, no more pain. I'm on verse number 4. Because what the physical body you have now, because you got to understand this too. Paul says we're going to have a celestial body. We live now in a terrestrial body. And we're going to have a celestial body, and we're going to have a whole new body. But we're also going to live in a whole new environment. In a land where we'll never grow old. And nothing that we don't need. And you're probably going to be a vegetarian, as Adam was before he ate of the forbidden fruit. We know that he was a vegetarian, and there were so many fruit trees in the Garden of Eden. So many vegetables and all this stuff. Go ahead.
You said in heaven we're gonna be vegetarian.
More than likely.
Why would we want to eat in heaven?
We're going to eat because you're going to maintain, you're going to have a physical body that has to be nourished. You're going to have, and you got to understand that most of the nutrients that you need come from plants. You're still going to have a physical body that will never get sick, that will never die, that will never age, but there has to be some joy.
That's right, because we're not
No, we're not be running flying with wings. We're going to be working. We're going to be serving God, but we're going to be in a body. But listen, you're going to listen. Have you ever had a good mango?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Isn't it something to bite into it and it's sweet and perfect, or a sweet and perfect strawberry? I even like not these new age tomatoes. I'm talking about the old tomatoes that you can make a mayonnaise sandwich out of. You bite into that thing and put a little salted mayonnaise on there. The Hellman's mayonnaise. Woo! You ain't need no meat. Perfect environment, perfect fruit, perfect vegetables. I mean, and this fruit from the tree of life is going to be so nutritious, so healthy, so pleasurable, that the Bible says the leaves from it is going to be for the healing of the nations. You're going to be in a perfect environment. You're not going to be flying around. We don't know whether we'll have places of worship or we'll go to a place of worship. But you're going to have a mansion. You're going to have probably, and one scholar was saying, he don't know if sleep's even going to be necessary. Because you're never going to get tired. And John really used metaphors that we could relate to as humans, but it's so much better than what we could ever imagine. We know that because of what Paul wrote. And Paul went there and came back. He said, eyes have not seen and neither have ears heard. It's so much better than the way John is writing it in this book. When it says no more tears, no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain, all these former things are going away. It's so much more better. I really can't use and express words of how good it is. It's so much better than what we could ever express. And then it said, he that sat upon the throne and says, look, I've made all things new. And he said to me, write down, I tell you these things are trustworthy and true. And he says, it is finished. Now, where have we heard that before? On the cross. Redemption is finished. Now all of humanity, Jesus gives a one-sentence commencement address to say that all that God started, God is now finished. It is finished. All of human history, time that is no more. We live in eternity. Make sense to you? He says, for I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and I will give you that thirst freely from the spring of the water of life. And all who victoriously will inherit all these blessings. And I will be their God and they shall be my people. Now he talks about in verse 8 who's not going to be there. Now listen, I need you to get this. This is not what a person do. This is who a person is. Because you can act cowardly, and the word cowardly mean are those who did not have enough courage to publicly confess Jesus Christ as Lord. The cowards, unbelievers, the corrupt, murderers, the immoral, those who practice witchcraft and idol worshipers and all liars, their fate shall be in the lake of burning sulfur or in the lake of fire. This is the second death. This is not what these people do. This is who these people are. And all the evidence, all the opportunities to repent, even some who lived through the tribulation and now are in the millennial reign of Christ, they still reject it. And so God, why would you make somebody come to a place that they don't want to be? Why would God make people come to heaven and they choose to reject him and never to accept him? Then it says, I saw at verse 9, and then one of the angels who had held the seven bowls in some translations, and the last seven plagues said to me, come and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. That's the church. That's when Jesus said at the Lord's Supper, I shall no longer drink and eat with you until we enter into my Father's house. The bride is the church. And this is going to be a wedding, feast of the Lamb. And then John says in verse 10, I'm probably not going to have enough time. He said in verse 10, And he took me in the spirit to a great mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem. That's the answering your question. That the holy city was Jerusalem. And now he's going to take him to a mountain and let him look over into this city, this new Jerusalem, descending down out of heaven from God. It shined with the glory of God, sparkled like precious stones of jasper, clear as crystal. The walls were broad and high, 12 gates guarded by 12 angels, and the name of the 12 tribes of Israel were written on the gates. And there were 3 gates in the east. Y'all picturing it in your mind? Think with your mind. Hear all this with your mind. Hear all this with your mind. There were 3 gates in the east, 3 gates in the north, 3 gates in the south, and 3 gates in the west. The foundation had 12 stones, and on them were written the name of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. 12 stones. You see it?
Yeah.
It's his foundation. And the angel who talked to me held a gold measuring stick to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. And when he had measured it, he found that the square as wide as it was long. That's important. The city was as wide as it was long. So it was wide, but it was long. And as wide as it was, as long as it was as long. You get what I'm saying? You get the picture?
Yeah.
So, and then this is what he said. In fact, its length and width and height was 1,400 miles. What a city. 1,400 miles in this direction, 1,400 miles in this direction, and some scholars believe, based on what it says, the walls were 1,400 miles high. Because look what it says. The length, the width, and the height were each 1,400 miles. What a city.
Yeah, because from here to New York is 300 miles. So
300 miles.
Yeah, so you know that's
From coast to coast of the United States is what? 1,300 or 1,400 miles. So the city could probably be a square the size of the United States, but in a perfect square, 1,400 miles in each direction, the height and width of it the same direction. And measuring, look how thick the walls were. Verse 17, measured the walls and found that the walls were 216 foot thick. 216 foot thick. That's verse 17. According to human standards, used by the angel. That's in parentheses. So that's how thick the walls of the city are. You know, the walls, the Great Wall of China ain't that thick. That's essentially 2 football fields wide. 2 football fields wide, sitting beside each other. Because the football field long is 100 yards from end zone to end zone. So take 2 of them and put them together plus 16 foot. That's the thickness of the walls. The city had, y'all still with me?
Yeah.
Make sure I ain't, okay. And then it talks about the walls were made of jasper. The walls were made of jasper. Y'all know what jasper look like? I got a jasper ring, jasper stone. The walls were made of jasper. The city was pure gold, clear as glass. The walls of the city, the foundations of stones, were laid with 12 precious stones. And he's going to list those stones of jasper and sapphire and aggregate and emeralds and onyx and all these different stones. And then he's going to talk about in verse 21, 12 gates.
12 gates.
3 in the east, 3 in the west, 3 in the north, 3 in the south. 3 huge gates. And I was listening to one guy projecting how big the gates could possibly be if the city is 1,500 miles in each direction or 1,400 miles and there's 3 gates and the city is the width, the height, and the width are the same. These are huge gates. Stories high. You look up, you probably could never see the top of it. And he says, each one of those gates were made of one solid pearl, or made of pearl. And the streets, this is where we get this from. The streets, or the main street, was pure gold, clear as glass. I can picture it in my mind. And this gold ain't gonna break, Gladys. It ain't gonna look like glass. And this is important. Verse 22. I saw no temple in the city. Ain't gonna be no church. No temple. Because that was important to the Jews. Because there's gonna be no place of worship, because the whole entire existence of the new heaven and new earth will be a place of worship. Because he's really giving, one scholar says, because he's really taking the idea that we are the temple of God. The presence of God is among us, and wherever we are in an act of worship by being in the very presence of God, so there will be no need for general assembly for the purpose of having church the way we have it here on earth. Make sense to you? There will be no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty, the Lamb, is its temple, his presence. And the city will have no need of sun or moon. There will be no sun in the sky. There will be no moon illuminating at night. Because Jesus Christ himself shall be the light of that city. For the glory of God illuminates in the city, for the Lamb is its light. Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And see, we only can understand the idea of the light, the glory of God in Jesus Christ, the glory that illuminates from him when we think about what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration. They saw Jesus transfigured, and the glory of God surrounded him. And really, some scholars believe, if you really study that Mount Transfiguration, that the glory that was around and shined from Jesus was so bright and illuminated in such a way that it blotted out the sun, the noonday sun. Okay. So and then the nations will walk in its light. The kings of the earth will enter the city so we do know that we believe that the city will be on earth, the New Jerusalem, and there's going to be people going in and out. Because you see, it says the kings of the world will enter the city in all of their glory. So we know it's probably, if every human being that's ever been born is saved and live here on the earth, there are no seas separating lands, and we're going to be able to go to the city, this New Jerusalem, this city, and we're going to be able to enter it from 4 directions. These gates are going to be huge, I'm telling you. And these gates will never be closed at the end of the day, because there is no night. There is no night. So you won't have to worry about getting up, going to sleep, an alarm clock. Now, I'm not making this up. I'm just reading what the text says.
Yeah.
And all the nations will bring their glory and honor into the city. There will be no temple, because Christ himself, but in this city, Jesus Christ will rule this city. And verse 27, nothing evil will be allowed to enter, nor anyone who practices shameful idolatry, dishonesty, but only those whose name is written in the Lamb's book of life. The only people gonna be able to enter, no evil.
So I see where it says in chapter 22, well, we would be vegetarian, because it said it would be full of trees with beautiful fruits.
What chapter you in?
I'm chapter 22.
We ain't there yet. You should put your little break on there. Put the brakes on. You put the brakes on. You skip it up in my Bible study. I'm gonna deal with that next week. Yeah, cause see, and that's important because that's what. Now listen, we know that Adam and Eve were vegetarians because they could eat from the fruit of any tree but one tree. And listen, whatever you eat now, you are eating a fruit or a vegetable that has been cursed. Is under the curse. The ground was cursed. The air was cursed. The fruit was cursed. The vegetable, everything you eat now does not taste as good as it did when Adam ate it, and neither is your palate, your tongue. When you bite it, you are eating it from a cursed body. You're eating cursed fruit in a cursed world. But all that's going to be reversed. You will no longer be under the curse because you'll live with a perfect body in a perfect environment. Not only will you not be cursed, but the fruit that you eat, that you pick. And listen, I don't even have time to explain how many different fruit trees were in the Garden of Eden. Some scholars believe there were 100,000, even possibly 1 million different kinds of fruit, because it was huge. There are some fruits that are native to certain countries and certain regions of the world, and you can get all kinds of fruits because mangoes don't really grow. Pomegranates really don't grow in America, but imagine all of the fruits in all of the countries of the world are in one place, and an endless supply. Vegetables, mushrooms, papayas. Ooh, you ain't never had a fried papaya? Whew, sweet as, oh my gosh. You talking about, whoo, it's a banana, but it's sweet. It's really small. And they use it in Jamaican cuisine, and they deep fry it. But it is sweet as anything you'll ever put in your mouth. It is a fried piece of mamma mia. Oh my God, I'm telling you. It's a girl that has opened a Jamaican food truck in Tupelo, and she, man, I'm telling you, you put that thing on your dish with that Jamaican jerk chicken or that Jamaican oxtail,